In the last lesson, you learned how to create a form in Acrobat. Now in this lesson, we're going to update those forms and enhance them also with the Acrobat tools. When I open up a form in Acrobat, I am seeing here the information bar that lets me know that there's a form and I can fill it out, but I actually want to do some editing of this form. So I'm going to go to my Tools pane and open up Forms, and I can choose to edit this form, and I'm going into the edit mode where I can start adding more fields or even previewing the form to see how it's going to display. Now I can also close the form for editing, and I go back into the main Acrobat format. And sometimes when you're editing your forms, you're actually going to be using the Acrobat tools instead of the actual form tools. And I'll give you an example here. Let me zoom in. What I might want to do is actually add a label. So this form was originally created as a Word file saved as a PDF, and then I added in form fields. Well, you may need to make some adjustments to the actual file itself, and I can come in here to Content, and with Content I could choose to edit document text. I'm going to hold down my Control key and click. That allows me to create a new box. And then I could put in a note, a label such as preferred contact method. And of course I could use my Edit Object tool to position it. But this is an easy way to add some labels in or make some changes to the artwork of this form. Alternatively, I'll come over here to the page thumbnail. I could actually simply replace the page, and I'm just updating the artwork. So I'll go here and replace pages. And I'm going to move into converted Word forms. Oops, excuse me, let me go back one step. I'm going to move into Word forms. Even though it looks empty, I actually can take a file. Let's just choose all files in here. I actually can replace pages that haven't yet been converted. So I've got some pages in here, and I'm going to move up. I've got some pages here as well. So I'm going to choose this one. And then you can notice that what's happening is actually Acrobat is converting the page to PDF, and then we'll replace that page. And there's been some adjustments. This file had some color changes and a little bit of a rearrangement of the look and feel of it. It also has some content already in place. So I'm going to go and edit that. In fact, what I'm also going to do is add a second page. So I'll right click and insert a page from File. And again, even though I'm just seeing PDFs, I do have the option of choosing different formats. So let's go ahead and try a Word file here. And I'm going to add a page 2 after. The advantage here is I don't have to rebuild the form from scratch. I can still take advantage of the fields and the work that I've already done and just edit them. Now I'm going to go back to Forms here in my tool pane and choose Edit, and I can make some adjustments. Now the artwork here doesn't have a table or a grid, and if I wanted some extra visual clues to align, I can move into my View, Show Hide, and turn on the rulers or the grids or even some guides. Let's try the grid here. And if you wanted a little more precision over the grid, you could also access the preferences, edit preferences, and you would be able to change the grid and make some changes to it so that it would match the settings of your page. I'm going to leave the defaults as they are. You can also, when you're working View, Show, Hide, you can also use a Snap to Grid feature, so when you're placing your items on the form field, they will snap to a particular position on the grid. What I'm going to do is actually turn the grid off and leave the snap feature off so I have a little more control over placement, and I can simply drag and drop or nudge wherever I want to go. Okay, so the form is almost up to date, but I'm going to add a few more elements. I'm going to copy and paste this field. Make sure I get the right one when I move it. Here we go. Copy and paste the field. And I'm going to reposition just a few of the elements to match or update to the new layout. I'm using my up arrow key here to simply nudge the files in place. Looks pretty good. Just nudging those in place. And I can even select all of these items. Just have it around. And I have my anchor around the date. You can see how it's highlighted. So that's the anchor form field. And so when I set up my alignment, align left, they all line up together. And I could even use some distribute to control the spacing between them. Let me try that again. Align, distribute. Let's try vertically. There we go. So it's just a little bit cleaner and looks pretty good. Okay. Now we do need to add the account. So this was a new field and we need to update this information. So I'm going to double click to access the properties. You could also right click. I'm going to go ahead and put in account. And for this account number, we have some options in here, and this is going to be a 6-digit account number, and I want to have it spread out or spaced out a certain way as well. When I uncheck all the features, I then have an option to create a combination of characters that will automatically space this out. And let's make this a 6-digit tool. Now it's going to be numbers only, so let's go into Format and change it to number. There won't be any decimal places. And I don't want to have a comma. I don't want to act like a number, so I'm going to choose the separator style without any commas. And even though it shows a decimal, it'll be irrelevant because we won't allow it to accept that. And of course, we don't need currency symbols, and we won't really have to worry about the negative numbers. Because I'm going to go here to validate, and in validate, I'm going to choose a range. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so now the number has to be within this range. And for one more thing, we'll go back to general and we'll make this a required field. Now, you'll notice that this field is broken up into 6 spaces, and that is because we use the combination feature of 6. Notice when I uncheck that, how it affects it. We'll go back to the 6. We'll click on close. Oh, there we go. And if we were taking a look at this in preview, notice that when I type in some numbers, I'm not even pressing a tab or anything, those information just shows up automatically. I'll go back in the edit mode. And over in my tasks, I have some features. So for example, I could clear my form and it removes any data that I might have put in during the preview experiment. Now, this particular form actually has a new page. It has an extra page here. And I'm going to add some of the elements from this first page and then incorporate some more features. So I'm going to highlight these first 4 fields and go ahead and copy them. And we'll just scroll down and right click and paste or Control V and position in place. Now, one thing that's really interesting here is that I have the exact same name, date, account, first name, last name. It doesn't have an appending like date 1 or date 2, it's just date, which means when I'm filling out the information in my form, and I'll go ahead and put a number, date in here, and we'll put in a number. what you're noticing is that this information is showing up on both the first page and also the last page. And so it's a great way to carry information into different places. Here we go. It's a way to carry information into different places by having that information transfer over. We'll go ahead and move it around. Now, what we really want to do is to have the full name, not first name and last name. And so we are simply going to resize this first field, resize the second field. You can see it has a first name and last name, just making it long enough that it'll fit. And then we can select them both, make sure we have our anchor form field, and then we can align top. And so we have a nice clean alignment of all the fields together. All right, well, let's add some calculations as well. We have the opportunity of ordering some different features, and we're going to use a text box to get started. So here's our text box, and we'll go ahead and just size it a little bit. Looks good. Let me just change there. And this is going to be if they happen to order the bouquet. And we will call this the quantity version. And it's going to be a number. Let me make sure it's a number there. And we won't have them beneath decimals. They have to order a specific number. So that looks good. It could have a parenthesis in there if they happen to order 1,000 items. And it's not going to have any special currency symbol because this is the quantity that they would be ordering. Now we can also put in a default setting, so where it says default view, by default they've ordered nothing. So that would be a way they could change it. And you could actually put a number of 1 or 2 in there. That looks good. And now I'm going to copy this and position over to this, just over to the side here. And this is going to be the total. Now, we notice that it's $15 a month, so if they ordered to 3 months, it would actually be 3 times 15, and that would be the total. So let's go ahead and make a couple of options in here. We'll change again the format. It's remembering all that information, but this time it will be currency, and we want it to be calculation. And this calculation is going to be a simple calculation. We're going to put in the same name. You can see right here, it's the BOUQTY. This is case sensitive, so you want to make sure that you spell it exactly as you see it. And using the simple asterisk to mean that it's going to be times 15. That'll give us our calculation. We'll click on OK, and we can see that calculation, and we could edit this in the future if we needed to. I'm going to go back to General, and since this is a calculation, I'm going to make this a read-only field, so the users aren't going to be able to change the information, but simply see what happens. Now I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm actually going to drag this with my Shift and Control. The Control key allows me to, just the Control key. The Control key allows me to make a copy of this field. So it's a nice way to make some shortcuts without having to do copy and paste, copy and paste. And now we're going to just make a couple of updates. So instead of bouquet quantity, this will be the potted plant. And we've got the seeds. And we'll change this information here. Potted plant. And again, we'll have the seeds. I do need to update the calculation. So here's the option for the calculation. We can see here that it's $1 per packet. Let's go ahead and edit that. And I want to make sure that I put in the correct name of the field. And we can simply click on the next item over here. Put in our item. And again, it's case sensitive, so I want to make sure that I spell it correctly as well. Okay. Looks good. And it's always a good idea to test your calculations because sometimes things change or sometimes we don't get the logic right. So I'm just going to test it. I'll put some numbers in there and make sure that everything looks okay. Looks good to me. Now I want to create a subtotal and we'll give them a 15% discount and the grand total. Let's go back in the edit mode. I'm going to take this file and control drag it down in place. Since it already has the formatting and the sizing, that makes sense. And I'm going to make sure I give it a name. Let's call this subtotal. The subtotal is going to be the sum of these three items. And an easy way to do that is to use the value is and choose the fields that we want to sum up. We want to sum up all the items with a quantity. So I'm going to go find those items in here. Okay. And in addition to sum, I could do something like product or average or minimum. So it has some shortcut options for creating a quick formula. The total is going to be, the discount is going to be a 15% discount. I actually want it to be a negative number so that I'll be able to easily subtract the information. So I'm going to take the subtotal, and again I need to spell it just as I see it here on my field. Subtotal times, there's that asterisk, and we'll do a -1. So it'll end up, negative 0.15. There we go. So we'll end up getting a 15% discount. And then finally, we want to make sure that we have named it properly. So there's discount. It's always important to have that name for the binding purposes as well as for calculations. And our last one will be our total. And this will be actually an easy sum of the subtotal and the discount. Because the discount is a negative number, it will actually subtract for us that 15%. And then we can click on close, and let's preview this, and you can see the information. It's possible here that I might not have renamed everything properly because this should be $3. So let's go ahead and double check on here, and that's a good reason why you want to test information. I can see this says seed total, and this says discount. It looks like because I had not changed the name first before I had made the formula, the information got carried over. Well, now that I'm going to reset this formula, and again, this was going to be the seed quantity times 1. Looks good. And we can preview that, and we can start seeing the nice results of what we have. I'll go ahead and add a barcode as well to help capture all this information. We're going to capture the account information. There's this field in here called barcode. I'm just going to move it down here to the bottom, a little lower. And it tells me that I can capture this information as a barcode for certain devices so they will be able to read them faster than having to enter the data in by hand. And it's also adds some extra efficiency or accuracy as well. So the value, I don't want all of these picked. I'm going to go ahead and deselect all of them. I just want the account information. And so the barcode is going to be connected with that account. And when we preview this, watch what happens when I change the account number here. You can see how the barcode actually updates to reflect it. All right, let's go ahead and update the reset button. The reset button looks pretty good, but we're going to actually give it a more graphical style here. And we're going to move into our options. Now, right now, the options is set up as a label only. When you click on the drop down, you can actually choose different choices in here. We are going to choose the label over icon that's going to put a label on top of a graphic. And we're also going to choose push. That gives us different methods so we can have a rollover effect when the picture is up, when you first load it, when you roll over it, where you hover over the file, and when you click on the file. I'll go ahead and choose my icon, and I'm going to browse to a location where I have some different effects, some different buttons. And I've got my up button. These have been named for me, so it makes it easy to find them. I'll go ahead and choose the down. Okay. I also want to give it a label. And finally, the rollover. Okay, and give it a label here. And when I move from up to hover to down, I actually can change the effect, and so it's going to look a little nicer. One other thing though is that this default button is still pulling in that gray color. So I'm going to go back to appearance. I'm going to change the fill color to no color so that it won't have a gray shadow over that image. And I can verify that the action is set up to move the mouse. Click on close. Looks pretty good. And if I wanted to copy that, of course, I could easily copy that field onto the next page. Now, one last thing you should be aware of when you are working on your fields is that you can control the tab order. What's going to happen when you preview is that you can preview from field to field as such here. Actually, Acrobat does a great job of figuring out the tab order for you. If you choose to order the tabs by row, Acrobat's going to visually analyze how your field should be tabbed, and it'll do all the work for you. You can specify to order by different tools, for example, manually drag them. And when you manually drag them, you're going to use the fields. And our fields, based on the display of our system, you're not seeing all of them, but you can actually see all the fields and simply drag and drop. But I really like this option for row. And you can also show the tab numbers. Go ahead and click on that so that you can easily see the information, the tab order, as you're working on the file. When you're finished with editing, you simply close Form for Editing, and you're back ready to use the file. I'm going to go ahead and save that file. And what you've seen is that after you've built the form, you have a lot of ways to enhance that form or edit it to make it even more powerful for your users.